Right, it is election season. Now, parties intending to contest the 2024 national and provincial elections have until 5 p.m. on Monday to revise their lists and to inform the Electoral Commission if they had nominated candidates who also appeared on the list of other parties or who were nominated as independent candidates. Now, the Commission allocated 2 days, that's yesterday and today, to avail the list and the names of the independent and political party candidates for inspection. And this is to allow interested parties to make objections. The lists will be available in all the IEC national offices, also their provincial offices, as well as at local municipal offices in each of the municipalities. The Commission says that 14,662 candidates have been nominated to contest the 887 seats available in the National Assembly and the 9 legislatures. Election Monitoring Network Chairperson Nkosikhulule Nyembezi joins us now virtually for a discussion about these latest developments. Nkosikhulule, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So 14,662 candidates vying for fewer than 900 seats, 887 to be exact, in the National Assembly and the 9 legislatures. What does that tell us?
It tells us that there is competition. It tells us that as voters, we have a wide choice of candidates and political parties from which to choose. And that should encourage us all to go out and vote and not say, I didn't see any face that I can relate to.
So that's interesting because those lists have now been made public. So we had yesterday and today for anyone who has any objection to actually go and peruse the list, the various party lists, and make those objections. Do you think that South Africans really immerse themselves in this process, or is it simply the political party members who are more interested in these lists?
I think that the list of interested parties has widened this time around because there are independent candidates and because there are additional new political parties. So we know that civil society has been conducting civic education, teaching people how to vote, what to look for, and how to interact with the election manifesto and these processes. So I think that the list of interested parties has widened this time around, and also because the method of communicating your objection is simple, because you can send things electronically, your correspondence, or you can submit it physically. In the age of social media and all that, I think that interested parties will come forward to make those objections. And because this is supposed to be a public discussion, even if it is somebody else who raises an objection informally, somebody else can forward that objection formally, because I think it's going to be a public discussion.
And I'm glad you touch on that, because by way of civic education, do you think enough is being done? Do people generally know that they can object? Because who can object to those names on those lists? And you just touched on it, but of course, do people generally know how they can go about objecting to a name that's on the list?
We can never do enough, but if you look at the glass being half full, something has been done. So there is a significant critical mass of people who know that they must undertake this process. And I also think that today's discussion adds into that information sharing. In the past, people have objected to these candidates, and we will know that the objections can come in 2 categories. The first category is objection based on legal grounds. The law prohibits some people from contesting. For example, those who have been convicted of a crime and were imprisoned and were not given an option to pay a fine. So they had to serve a prison term. Also people who are mentally unstable and so on. So on those grounds, the IEC will be able to process those objections and remove from the list those people. But on the other hand, and the most important hand, is that we can object on moral grounds. We know people who have been involved in maladministration of public funds, corruption, and so on. I mean, we've had formal processes like the Zondo Commission and other commissions. We've had the Auditor General's reports telling us about these people who have been involved in the mismanagement of funds, but also just criminals, rapists, and others. So my point is, in the past, people have objected, and we expect them to do so even this time around.
But that raises so many questions. For the morality question, as an example, how does one go about, making that case in a convincing way? Because people will say, my morality does not necessarily echo yours. So how do we go about making those sort of submissions?
In the main, the objections will be based on people who have served in government, either as elected representatives or as appointed representatives. And while serving in office, they would have mismanaged public funds, and that is public record. So we will object to that. Or if somebody locally is a rapist, somebody involved in gender-based violence, we know about it. There would have been a case opened, either they were convicted or they are still supposed to go to court. We will know about that because it's public record. What becomes important is that the decision makers are at 3 levels. One is the IEC. When it receives the objections, they can remove the names if it's on legal grounds. 2 is the political parties that send these candidates. When the IEC forwards the objections to say on moral grounds, here is an objection, do something. Then the party is supposed to do something, remove those candidates. Thirdly, it is us, the voters. If we see that our objections have not been taken care of, then at the ballot box, when we vote on the 29th of May, then that is when you say, I don't trust this party, I will not vote for it.
So when it comes to, for example, where you say where candidates whose name appear on the list are people who have perhaps made themselves guilty of corruption or mismanaged funds, or people who have a track record, is one then necessarily required to provide the proof to basically stave your allegation or your objection to said candidate?
Yes, yes, you are supposed to, because it will be something that we know of. Even if it is about a private assault, like a rape case, then if you have opened the case and there is evidence, that is, if you've opened the case and there is an investigation, then that is what you bring forward as evidence. Now, the importance of this matter is that the standard and the bar is not too high. So you don't need to bring volumes and volumes of evidence. For example, in the Zondo Commission, their recommendations say there are some people who have done something wrong, but the relevant authorities must still take action, appropriate action against those people. So it could be that the relevant authority has not yet taken action, but just because in that report it is already stated that this person must be sanctioned, then we will say we object to that person. And then the other thing about like that setting that bar, it also has to do with the fact that elections work in 2 ways, in the mind and in the heart. So if in the mind, rationally, we see that we can't vote for you, we won't vote for you. If in the heart, we say, we won't vote for you, we won't. But I think one of the important things to so that there's no witch hunt is the one that says when the candidates crisscross our communities, go to campaign for our votes, it is also an opportunity for us to ask them, what about that case that is pending? What about that objection that we have sent? So that even the political parties can respond appropriately in a way of convincing us that this person is legible or is not eligible. Then we can decide on the 29th of May.
With regard to people who may have criminal records, who have spent time behind bars as a result of criminal activity, in that case, how do you go about it, especially if you are not sure whether someone, for example, may have been granted a presidential pardon?
You make that objection, and the IEC or the decision-making authority will sit and assess and make a determination. But go ahead and make that objection. But also, I think because this is not a witch hunt, it is a process of debate and creating the trust between the candidates and the voters. So even the person who there is an objection against still has an opportunity to say, no, I think you understand it incorrectly. This is how the situation stands. And then we get to understand better and then see if it convinces our heart and it convinces our mind, because ultimately it's the voter who decides.
And then how exactly do you go about submitting that objection? You spoke about the online avenue that exists, or you can go in, but who should those objections be addressed to? If someone is sitting here now watching us and thinking, okay, I saw a name of a certain person and I would like to object to that.
The objection goes to three places. Primarily, it goes to the Electoral Commission. That's the formal process. You write a letter and say, I object. It doesn't have to be a long letter, but it must make sense. It goes to the Electoral Commission. It goes to the political party concerned, secondly. And thirdly, you talk about it in your community because it goes to the voters. Ultimately, they are the ones who must take a decision. I say it goes to the IEC primarily because the IEC can still forward objections to political parties, objections that are outside the realm of the law that empowers the IEC to say, we determine. It can forward to political parties. And so ultimately, your objection will get to the decision maker at an appropriate level. Just send to all three.
And the powers of the IEC in this regard, is there any further recourse? Let's say if you submit an objection and the IEC goes through its processes and ultimately the person prevails after everything has been done. Is that it, or is there any further recourse for people who feel strongly about objecting to some candidates?
The IEC is the ultimate decision maker on objections based on law. Because when they make a determination, they will use the law and say, the law says you are ineligible if you are not in the voter's roll of whatever other reason. So they will decide accordingly. Number two, the IEC will forward objections to the political parties concerned in the case that it is the political party that must make a determination. And then ultimately, the outcome of it all comes back to the voters, who shall then say, yes, I am satisfied with the outcome, or I am not, but in the sense that I can continue to vote for this party or this candidate, or I will not vote for that candidate. So ultimately, the power lies with the people, having taken the process through and understood what the outcome is. And why it is important also to make these objections is that we don't want people who are ineligible to be on that list, because it might be that at the beginning of the term of this office in June, some people who we should have objected to will not be sworn in. But during the 5-year term, 2 years, 3 years down the line, because the parties are allowed to substitute, they are allowed to substitute candidates. Then we find the name of this person. So it is important that we do not allow, we keep on and object so that those people are not in that list at all, so that they do not pop up in the course of this 5-year term.
Well, Nkosikhulule Nyembezi, thank you so much for speaking to us, the Elections Monitoring Network chairperson there, talking about the candidates list, which you are, of course, open to view until 5 p.m. And this is, of course, if you have any objections to any of the candidates who've been placed on the party political list or independent list, the process is underway, started yesterday. You have until 5 p.m. today to object. And as Nkosikhulule was explaining the process there, and also making sure that we understand the power that we have as the electorate. So if there's someone on any list that you object to, as he says, the bar is not very high. So you just write a letter, you make sure that your objection is noted, and you send it through via the official channels that are available to you to the IEC. They then have to look at that, and it will be sent to the person of the political party involved. And of course, that process will then unfold for them to respond to said objection. But of course, this you have opportunity to do until 5 p.m. today. So that's where we're going to leave that one for now. And this, of course, ahead of the national and provincial elections scheduled for the 29th of May this year.